My friends, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, and write a comment, and we begin. Part 1. The argument expanded. The rain hammered against the industrial-sized windows of our tiny, overpriced Brooklyn apartment, a relentless percussion that seemed determined to drown out any semblance of peace. The building, a converted warehouse in Bushwick, was supposed to be charming, with its exposed brick and lofty ceilings. But tonight, it felt more like a concrete tomb, amplifying the echoes of our escalating argument. I loved this apartment when we'd first moved in, but now it felt like an awful reminder. Liam and I had been at each other's throats for hours, a low, simmering argument that had finally erupted into a volcanic eruption of pent-up frustration. It had started, predictably, with something ridiculously trivial, whose turn it was to take out the overflowing mountain of takeout containers and coffee grounds that constituted our shared existence. We argued about everything like that these days. But the trash was just the spark. It quickly ignited a much deeper fire, a conflagration of long-simmering grievances and unspoken resentments that had been festering beneath the surface of our relationship for months. I accused him of being emotionally unavailable, of retreating into his music, of spending more time with his bandmates than with me, his girlfriend of 5 years. It felt like I was always putting in more effort than he was. He always had time for his friends, his band, his hobbies, but never really seemed to make the same amount of time for me. He countered, his voice rising with each syllable, accusing me of being controlling, of stifling his artistic freedom, of not supporting his dreams. "You don't get it, Sarah. You never have," he'd shouted, his eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in a long time, a fire that used to be reserved for his music, but was now aimed squarely at me. The air crackled with a palpable tension, thick enough to choke on. The scent of stale coffee and unwashed dishes hung heavy in the air, a testament to our increasingly chaotic lives. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest, a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. It was a feeling I knew all too well, a sense of impending doom that had become a constant companion in our relationship over the past year. We were circling the drain, spiraling towards an inevitable end, and we both knew it, even if we refused to acknowledge it aloud. And then he said it. The words that shattered the fragile remnants of our shared life, like a sledgehammer to a stained glass window. I heard him say he would never be with me again, so I left. He didn't yell it, didn't scream it, didn't even look particularly upset when he said it. In fact, his tone was almost casual, detached, as if he were stating a simple, undeniable fact of life, like the sky was blue or the earth was round. He didn't even meet my gaze, his attention fixed on the rain-streaked window, his silhouette outlined against the flickering neon glow of the bodega across the street. His words were like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of me. A wave of numbness washed over me, quickly followed by a sharp, searing pain that ripped through my chest, leaving me gasping for breath. My world tilted on its axis, the familiar landscape of our life together suddenly crumbling into dust. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss of uncertainty. I couldn't speak, couldn't form a coherent sentence. My throat tightened, constricting around the lump of unshed tears that threatened to choke me. I just turned and walked away, instinctively fleeing the suffocating confines of our apartment, the oppressive weight of his casual cruelty pressing down on me, stealing my breath. I grabbed my worn leather jacket, the keys to my vintage Vespa, and bolted out the door, leaving him standing there in the rain-streaked silence. I didn't know where I was going, didn't have a plan, didn't even care. I just knew I had to escape. I needed to put as much distance as possible between myself and him, between myself and the wreckage of our failed relationship. I needed to breathe, to think, to figure out how to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. All I knew was that leaving was the only option left. Part 2. The discovery expanded. The rain was a relentless curtain as I sped through the streets of Brooklyn on my Vespa, the cold wind whipping at my face, doing little to quell the heat of humiliation that burned in my cheeks. Each passing block felt like another step further away from Liam, another attempt to erase the image of his detached face and the sound of his damning words. Finally, I pulled over to a curb on Avenue A in the East Village, the vibrant energy of the neighborhood a stark contrast to the suffocating gloom I felt inside. I stumbled into a dive bar called the Starlight Lounge, a dimly lit, perpetually hazy establishment where the air hung thick with the scent of stale beer, cheap cigarettes, and forgotten dreams. The red vinyl booths were worn and cracked. The jukebox was perpetually stuck on a bluesy lament, and the bartender, a grizzled man with a face like a road map, didn't ask questions. It was exactly what I needed. A place where anonymity was guaranteed and judgment was scarce. I slid into a corner booth, seeking the refuge of shadows, and signaled to the bartender for a whiskey neat. The burn of the liquor was a welcome distraction, a temporary anesthetic for the gaping wound in my heart. I nursed the drink slowly, watching the blurry faces around me, the cast of characters who populated the Starlight Lounge, the lonely regulars nursing their sorrows, the boisterous groups of friends laughing too loudly, the young lovers locked in their own little world. Everyone here had a story, a secret, a reason for seeking solace in the bottom of a glass. As the whiskey warmed my insides, the numbness began to wear off, replaced by a wave of raw, unfiltered pain. The image of Liam's face, his apathetic expression as he uttered those devastating words, replayed in my head, a broken record stuck on repeat. He would never be with me again. What did that even mean? Was he already planning a future without me? Was there someone else waiting in the wings? Had I been so oblivious to the signs? The thought gnawed at me, a burning suspicion that I couldn't ignore, a seed of doubt that quickly sprouted into a full-blown obsession. We'd been together for 5 years, a significant chunk of my adult life. We'd shared so much. Laughter, tears, secrets, dreams. I thought I knew him inside and out, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I'd been too blind, too trusting, too caught up in my own world to see what was really happening right under my nose. I replayed our last few months together in my mind, searching for clues, for red flags that I had missed. The late nights at the studio, the vague excuses, the increasingly strained silences between us. Had I been so consumed by my own insecurities and anxieties that I had failed to notice the subtle signs of his detachment? The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that there had to be someone else. He wouldn't just casually throw away 5 years of his life without a compelling reason. The never be with me again had to mean something, and it likely wasn't just a desire for more alone time. Fueled by a potent cocktail of whiskey, wounded pride, and a desperate need for answers, I did something I knew I would likely regret. Something that went against every fiber of my being. I pulled out my phone, took a deep breath, and logged into his email account. I know. It was a terrible thing to do, a gross violation of privacy, a betrayal of trust. But I was desperate. My heart was breaking, my world was crumbling, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of uncertainty. I needed to know the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. I told myself it was the only way I could move on. My fingers trembled as I typed in his password, a password I had memorized years ago, a password that now felt like a key to Pandora's box. I held my breath and hit enter, bracing myself for whatever horrors I might find lurking in the depths of his inbox. This was where things would either become more manageable, or everything would fall apart even worse than they already were. Part 3. The confrontation expanded. The ride back to the apartment felt like an eternity, each passing minute amplifying the dread that gnawed at my insides. The gray morning light cast long, ominous shadows across the Brooklyn landscape, mirroring the darkness that had settled over my soul. My hands were still shaking as I parked the Vespa outside our building, the image of the emails searing itself into my memory. As I climbed the creaky stairs to our apartment, the familiar sounds of the city, the distant sirens, the rumble of the subway, the murmur of early morning conversations, seemed muted, distant. The only sound that registered was the pounding of my heart, a frantic drumbeat echoing in my ears. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the smell of stale beer and unwashed laundry hitting me like a punch. The apartment was a disaster zone, a testament to the chaos of the previous night's argument and Liam's general lack of domestic skills. Crumpled takeout containers littered the coffee table, empty beer cans were scattered across the floor, and a thick layer of dust coated every surface. It felt like a reflection of our relationship, messy, neglected, and falling apart. Liam was asleep on the couch, sprawled out in a tangled mess of blankets and pillows. He looked younger, more vulnerable, without the weight of his responsibilities and his carefully constructed facade. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, a flicker of the love I once felt for him. But the memory of Olivia's emails, the image of their intimate exchanges, quickly extinguished that flicker, replacing it with a burning rage. I stood over him for a moment, watching him sleep, wrestling with the conflicting emotions that raged inside me. Part of me wanted to shake him awake, to scream at him, to demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to simply walk away, to erase him from my life without a word. But I knew I couldn't do that. I needed to confront him, to hear him admit the truth, to understand how he could have betrayed me so callously. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the inevitable confrontation. My voice was cold, steely, devoid of any emotion. "Who's Olivia?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries, not allowing myself to betray even a hint of vulnerability. He stirred, blinking sleepily, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Olivia? What are you talking about, Sarah?" He sat up, rubbing his eyes, his voice groggy and disoriented. "Don't play dumb, Liam," I said, my voice rising with each word. I reached into my bag and pulled out the printout of the email exchange, the evidence of his infidelity, and threw it at him, the pages fluttering down onto his lap. "I know everything. I saw the emails." His face paled, the color draining from his cheeks. He stammered, trying to deny it, to deflect, to concoct some flimsy excuse. "Sarah, I can explain. It's not what you think." But the evidence was irrefutable. The words were right there in black and white, the confessions of his secret affair, the intimate details of their clandestine meetings. He had been cheating on me, lying to me, betraying me for months. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he said, his voice barely a whisper, his eyes downcast, refusing to meet my gaze. "It just happened. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "It didn't mean anything?" I repeated, my voice rising again, cracking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How could you do this to me? How could you throw away everything we built? 5 years, Liam. 5 years of my life, and you just tossed it away like it was nothing." He had no answer. He just sat there, hunched over on the couch, staring at the floor, a pathetic excuse for a man, a shadow of the person I thought I knew. The Liam I thought I knew was gone. This was someone completely different. The room was silent, save for the sound of my ragged breathing and the distant hum of the city. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of betrayal, with the wreckage of our shattered dreams. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of him any longer. The tears began to flow freely, a torrent of grief and rage washing over me. I had to get out of there, to escape the suffocating confines of the apartment, to find some way to salvage what was left of my life. Part 4. The revelation expanded. The apartment felt like a cage, a gilded prison filled with the ghosts of our shared memories. Every object, every photograph, every piece of furniture was a painful reminder of what we had lost, of the future that would never be. I needed to escape, to sever all ties with this place and the man who had shattered my heart. I moved with a frantic energy, driven by a desperate need to reclaim my life, to regain control of my narrative. I packed my bags, throwing my clothes and belongings into suitcases with a fury, my movements jerky and uncoordinated. I didn't bother folding anything, didn't care about wrinkles or organization. All I cared about was getting out, leaving this place behind me as quickly as possible. Each item I packed sparked a new wave of memories, a fresh surge of grief. The worn leather jacket I had bought on our first trip to Europe, the concert t-shirt from our favorite band, the hand-knitted scarf his grandmother had made for me. Each object was a testament to the love we had once shared, a love that now felt like a cruel illusion. As I packed, my emotions shifted and swirled, a turbulent storm of anger, sadness, resentment, and a lingering sense of disbelief. One moment, I was consumed by a white-hot rage, imagining all the ways I could make Liam pay for his betrayal. The next moment, I was overcome by a wave of crushing sadness, mourning the loss of our relationship, the death of our dreams. And then, just as quickly, I would find myself numb, detached, as if I were watching my own life unfold from a distance. I didn't want anything to do with him, with this apartment, with this life we had built together. It was all tainted now, poisoned by his lies, irrevocably damaged by his betrayal. I wanted to erase him from my memory, to start over, to create a new life for myself, free from the pain and disappointment he had inflicted upon me. As I was zipping up my last suitcase, ready to make my escape, I noticed something on the coffee table. A small velvet box. It was nestled among the scattered beer cans and crumpled takeout containers, an incongruous object of elegance and refinement amidst the surrounding squalor. Curiosity, despite myself, got the better of me. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, a strange premonition gripping my heart. The box was a deep, rich blue, the kind usually reserved for fine jewelry. My breath caught in my throat. Inside, nestled against a bed of satin, there was a diamond ring. A beautiful, sparkling ring, a solitaire diamond set in a delicate platinum band. It was stunning, breathtaking, the kind of ring you dream of receiving from the person you love. He was going to propose. After months of cheating, after telling me he would never be with me again, he was planning to ask me to marry him. The hypocrisy was staggering, the audacity beyond comprehension. It was like a cruel joke, a twisted parody of romance. But then I noticed something else. A small, folded note tucked inside the box, nestled beside the ring. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, unsure if I could bear to face another blow. But I knew I had to know. I had to see the full extent of his deception. I unfolded the note, my hands trembling uncontrollably, the paper crinkling in my grasp. Part 5. The twist expanded. The note was written on a small, cream-colored card, the elegant script unmistakable, Liam's handwriting. But it wasn't addressed to me. The words jumped out at me, mocking me with their blatant disregard. My dearest Olivia. A wave of nausea washed over me, a sickening realization dawning in my mind. He wasn't going to propose to me. The ring wasn't for me. It was for her. Olivia. That's what "he would never be with me again" truly meant. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was already planning his future, his forever, with someone else. The note continued, the words twisting the knife in my already wounded heart. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you, my love. You make me happier than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me? He never said those words to me, not once in our 5 years together. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the floor tilting beneath my feet. He had planned it all. The affair, the breakup, the proposal. It was all a carefully orchestrated performance, a cruel and calculated act of betrayal. He had been leading a double life, weaving a web of lies and deceit, and I had been completely oblivious, a naive pawn in his twisted game. But why had he left the ring and the note at our apartment? Why not at Olivia's? It made no sense. Unless... Then, like a lightning bolt, the truth struck me with brutal clarity. He wasn't going to break up with me before he proposed to Olivia. He was planning on ending things with me after he had secured her commitment, after he had the ring on her finger. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He needed me gone so he could start his new life with her without me knowing the exact truth. He knew I was a good person, and he used that against me. A sickening understanding settled over me. He was terrified, convinced that I would react badly, that I wouldn't let him go easily. That's why he had been so evasive, so distant, so careful to avoid any direct confrontation. He had likely painted me to Olivia as some sort of crazy, obsessive girlfriend, someone who would make his life a living hell if he dared to leave. A slow, sardonic smile spread across my face. He thought he had everything figured out, that he was in complete control of the situation. But he didn't know me at all. He underestimated my strength, my resilience, my capacity for righteous anger. He thought he knew me, but I was someone completely different than who I pretended to be. All I wanted was to be happy, and he was never going to give me that happiness. I needed to take it for myself. I closed the velvet box, the weight of it feeling oddly satisfying in my hand. I slipped it into my purse alongside my wallet and keys, as if it were just another everyday item. A power surged through my veins, a sense of newfound agency and determination. I wouldn't let him define me, wouldn't let him dictate my future. I was done playing the victim. It was time to take control of my own narrative. I walked out of the apartment, leaving my suitcases behind. I didn't need them. I didn't need any reminders of the life I was leaving behind. As I walked, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I never saw Liam again, nor did I seek him out. He was dead to me, a chapter in my life that was firmly closed. I moved on, rebuilt my life, and found happiness in unexpected places. I'm happily married now, to a kind, intelligent, and supportive man who cherishes me for who I am. He may not be who I initially expected to be with, but he's more than I ever could have asked for. And although not to him, I did have the chance to marry an even greater man. We had a beautiful wedding a few years later, one that the original receiver of the ring didn't attend. After a few months had passed after my departure, after I had healed and regained my sense of self, I did what any self-respecting woman with a penchant for justice would do. I used a burner phone to give Olivia an anonymous phone call, telling her everything. I detailed the affair, the lies, the note, and the carefully orchestrated plan Liam had concocted. I painted a vivid picture of the man she was about to marry, revealing his true character, his capacity for deceit and manipulation. The weight was lifted off my chest, and I felt a great amount of relief. I was never contacted by either of them again. I can only imagine the fallout, the recriminations, the shattered trust. I don't know if Olivia ever forgave Liam, or if they eventually made it down the aisle. And frankly, I don't care. Their story was no longer my concern. The final twist? The man I was eventually to marry, the one I did marry, was his best friend. He was Liam's best man at their wedding, and once he found out what Liam did to me, he helped put everything in motion to catch him. He confessed all of this to me after we began dating, and I knew he was the one I was to spend the rest of my life with. My life is full of love, laughter, and happiness, and I owe it all to the day I walked away from Liam and his lies, all his secrets.